pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, let's see, we have one change to the agenda under the unfinished business, item 12-162. We would be adding a motion before the motion that's currently written in the engagement. Is a motion to receive a letter dated November 19th from Clark Hill, and it's on your desk tonight, memo from McGraw-Morris dated 11/17, and a verbal report from City Manager Todd Campbell. So that would be the motion before that motion that's currently written. And do we have any other changes to the agenda? Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Request from Main Street for the banners removal.
Sorry about that. And also, we're going to be taking the item 12-173 off the agenda. So if are there any other changes to the agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Morrow, second. Gearbaugh. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We have Parks Commission Annual Report.
Good evening, everyone. I guess I'd like to start at the very end of our report. It highlights our commissioners and all the people that are involved in the Parks Commission. And I'm up here giving this presentation tonight because our leader, our chairperson, Angela Van Scoik, has just recently moved out of state. She moved to Colorado with a different job opportunity. So we've had, in this past year, a lot of change in our commissioners, and I think it's okay though. For a long time we were very steady with a lot of the same people, but now we have a lot of new faces. And tonight we have with us, we have Mike Johnson, one of our commissioners. We have Paul Borger, one of our newer commissioners, as well as Greg Hohenberger, who is a new commissioner as well. But in addition, Mike now is our chairperson, but he's going to be taking over our meeting tomorrow night, so he begged me to take this annual report, and I gladly agreed. In addition to the people I just mentioned, we have Eric Harris, Elena Hess, Mary Hipscher, and Mark Taylor, who are our current commissioners. We do have one opening, so we're looking for anyone from the community that is interested in the parks. You know, we're more than happy to have them on. They would need to make an application with our city clerk and bring them on board. I'd like to mention some of the people that have, I mentioned Angela, but Mike Popovitz, he was on our commission for quite some time. Excellent person on the commission, really refined our Green Thumb program, so he's being missed very much. We still have him involved somewhat, but not on the commission. And TJ Trzowski, who was on briefly, and his job has changed somewhat, so he has more duties there. So also our city council representative, Mr. Jim Peters, is an excellent representative for the Parks Commission. He's done a fantastic job, and we really appreciate all his work. And lastly, Jody Roberts, who is our recording secretary, does an outstanding job, and obviously all of us would not be able to function without her, so she's wonderful. The Park Commission this past year in 2012, we had several different items that we were trying to focus on. One is to expand and improve the Parks Commission online presence. Another one was to offer a community-type activity in at least 3 different parks and increase the spring park cleanup participation. The first one regarding the online presence, we've done a pretty good job of this. We now have 106 likes on Facebook. We have 106 followers. And if anyone is interested, we'd love to have you follow us as well. And we're trying to keep people up to date with what's happening in the parks, different park articles, a couple of things that have happened recently. One of our high school juniors, Simon Rosinski, has indicated that he wants to help out with a Risden Park project, so we've been putting that information online and on our website and Facebook. Also, our website, we've been really looking at that and trying to tweak it and keep some pertinent information, our annual report, our goals, and all of the different functions that the Park Commission is doing on the city website, trying to keep that up to date. Activities in the parks. This past year, we conducted our annual park cleanup at Colony Park, and it was extremely well received. We got a lot of neighbors and different commissioners helping out, and we did a garlic mustard pull. And garlic mustard this past year was just, it was all over the place, and we pulled out probably a pile 10 or 12 feet high by 20 feet long. It was a lot of garlic mustard. I'm sure we didn't get all of it, so there's a lot out there. And in addition to that, we had an orienteering clinic held by one of our Eagle Scouts at Curtis Park, and very well received, and also a fly fishing clinic held at Mill Pond with our own local fly fishing expert, Dirk Fischbach. We had quite a few people that were involved in that activity. So we're really trying to get programs into the parks and to let people know what resources are available and that, how they can enjoy their parks. Another thing that we're very proud of that we just accomplished was the Green Thumb Award program this year. We just did our awards in October, at the October meeting, and this year we had 39 nominations, a little bit lower than the previous year, but I really have to think that the drought, the lack of water, kind of deterred some people from growing. And but we had some excellent nominations. We had excellent award winners, and it really brings out a very nice community spirit with the Green Thumb Awards. And just to mention very briefly, Mike Popovitz, who is not on the board any longer, he really improved that whole program where it's very easy for our commissioners to manage the program, where all the work isn't relied on one person. Everyone has equal amount of things, so it becomes very easy when many hands are doing all the work. So I'd like to thank him for that. And that's about it. We're really, right now, we're working on our budgeting for 2013 and 14, and trying to educate our new commissioners and get everyone up to date with what's going on. So,
Great, thank you.
you're welcome.
Anybody got any questions for Carla?
Just real quick, I see on some of your SWAT items, you have a create an adopt a park program. Let us know how we can help out on that, because I think that's a great
Great.
idea. So that would be something that I would more than like to promote for our city.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I never see another mustard garlic weed, that's okay by me.
We will in the spring, I'm sure.
That was one of them.
Okay,
Is that-
any other questions? Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next, we have the Saline Main Street is going to do their baseline survey presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We want to thank you for allowing this time to present the baseline assessment. I'm going to introduce you to Brittany Hoskew, who is the organization team specialist for the Michigan Main Street Center. She's going to go ahead and do the presentation, a quick overview of the assessment and explain what we did last spring. And then each of our team leaders will get up and also give you an overview of the projects and programs that we have been working on for 2013. But we'll be quick.
So thank you very much. Cindy asked me to come in and kind of just give a brief overview of the baseline assessment and some of the findings from the baseline. This is a presentation I gave to the board of directors a few months ago just to kind of get them started in the right direction for the upcoming year. I know many of you have seen the full report, so this is just kind of some basic overviews. So the baseline assessment, the actual assessment is a service that all of the select Main Street communities receive in their first year of the program. The baseline assessment is a team of both national Main Street and Michigan Main Street professionals who come in for 2 days and meet with all of the relevant organizations that have missions that align with the Michigan Main Street program or the Saline Main Street program. So as you know, the Main Street program here locally is aimed to be a very comprehensive program, and so there's already a lot of, Saline is very fortunate to have a lot of organizations currently that work in similar areas. So this was an opportunity for us to get a pulse on where Saline was in their downtown development efforts, but what resources were available to the community at large, so that we could provide recommendations moving forward that built on the shoulders of the existing success and helped all organizations move forward under a common vision. Basic observations that we found that I know you're very aware of: a wonderful community, a very involved community, great public-private partnership between the municipality and the local community groups, a strong school system, which is a huge asset for your Main Street program, as well as I know a lot of other organizations that take advantage of that. The downtown has some great bones. The infrastructure and the buildings are something that, as a Main Street program, we can't replicate, we can't recreate, and often we're asked to do that, recreate the history. And you guys have that, it exists. You have a strong business community, some vacancies, but the businesses that you do have, there's retailers there, it's not entirely service, and the retailers that you do have are organized and involved. The Saline Main Street program, when we came in here in April, was something that we use in examples in other communities already. You're kind of legends already in the Main Street world. So the momentum that you guys had coming into this was something that we rarely see in new communities. We always look for communities, we only accept communities into the select level that can demonstrate broad-based community support, and that was something that was beyond apparent when you brought 60 some odd people to Lansing to show us why you wanted to become Main Street. So that was exciting. Some general opportunities that we found through the course of the 2 days was a real opportunity to leverage the downtown as the center for the community and a real focus and information. There's a lot of resources available to the community, but they seem to be slightly fragmented. And so to kind of focus those resources in one unified voice will only make your community more powerful. Again, a lot of services around the area of business assistance and business retention, but when we started talking about entrepreneurial development and business recruitment, there seemed to be a hole there. Again, strong school systems allow for a great opportunity in multi-generational involvement. Many studies show that participation by young people in community development in early stages shows a higher retention rate later on as adults, staying in the community and being young families in the community. So that's something we definitely wanted to encourage. And then strategic public improvement. The opportunities and the planned public improvements in the future had an opportunity for the Main Street program to really participate in engaging the community for strategic improvements in the future. So some basic recommendations for the board of directors, looking at focusing on that vision and mission so that the projects that would come out of each of the 4 committees that are completely volunteer based would be focused in a long-term goal, that these projects were focused and had a return that not only the Main Street board was looking for, but the local municipality was looking for as well. The Main Street manager, the biggest thing, our biggest recommendation was to familiarize themselves with the community in a way that even a local probably wouldn't come into. So familiarizing themselves with both the business and property owners so that they can be seen as a resource moving forward. The organization team had a pretty hefty list of recommendations, all focused around volunteer recruitment, retention, and fundraising. I know that the support the municipality is providing, the Main Street program, is one that that it tapers throughout the course of the program, and so we want to provide services to the local Main Street program so that they can supplement those revenues with private revenues. So that was a focus, all of which can only be done through strong communication, and that's something that we saw that was prevalent when we came here in April and today, that there's strong communication within the community. The promotions team, you guys like to party here in Saline. We found no shortage of festivals and events that here in the neighborhood. So we really wanted to leverage the promotions team, encourage them to leverage the existing events to make sure that each event was having a return for the business community, that was communicating a specific niche or mission of the organization in the downtown, and then also communicated to a target demographic that was both the intention of the downtown but also the business and community, so that each event has a return for both the city and the businesses within the downtown. The Economic Restructuring Committee, we felt that the best recruitment was retention, and so developing those relationships with the existing businesses would provide the best opportunity for that entrepreneurial development later on, is to have an understanding of what the needs were of the existing business community. And that will be supplemented with the market study that comes in year 2 and 3. The design team, really a couple of things. We wanted to start with education. You have great resources here locally in historic preservation, but really showing the Main Street program as a resource there. We work in partnership with the State Historic Preservation Office, and so we wanted to make sure that those existing organizations were able to use our services. To second that, or to mimic that, we also work with all state agencies that grant funds to municipalities, and have made a concerted effort to make sure that our Main Street communities are scored higher because of their demonstration of capacity. And so the design team was then also requested to put together, define the incentives that are available for local businesses and property owners, all of which are things that we advocate for at the state level for each of our Main Street communities. So since this report in April and the recommendations that were provided to the Main Street managers and board of directors, we've been back several times for committee and work plan trainings, and each of the committees have since developed work plans which will essentially steer the work for the upcoming year, all built from the recommendations that Michigan Main Street provided in the baseline, but then also through a visioning session that the board had during their time in associate. So with that, I will bring Cindy up here, and I believe the board, she wants to make some introductions and talk about some of the work that they've been up to over the past 6 months.
Before we get started with the update from each of the team leaders, I wanted to introduce our new Main Street manager, Bob Rosenberger. Would you like to come and say hi to everybody?
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's an honor to be part of this Saline Main Street team. I'm very excited about the opportunity to be part of the team, and also to serve our community and support our city. I look forward to working with all of you in the days, weeks, months, and years to come.
Thank you, Bob. And Karen's going to start off with giving you a quick overview of where we are with our finances.
Hi. I think most of you have received our financial records, but just a couple of highlights. As Brittany mentioned, we've been involved in a few events in this town. So 3 of those have helped put us in a solid financial position. That's the Oktoberfest Harvest of the Arts. We raised $6,000. Be Blooming, we have $3,000 ready to spend for next season. And Music Under the Arch, we've raised $4,000 for the 2013 series starting in January. Overall, we have $20,000 sitting in the bank at this point to help fund us going forward for the next 9 months. We have received $12,000 from corporations and individuals over the last 18 months. We also have collected $23,000 from the EDC budget. We still have $37,000 left in the bank to collect over the next 9 months. And at this point, we're spending about $5,000 a month on payroll and overhead with the rent. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. To introduce the next speaker, and it's from our economic restructuring team, and they refer to themselves as the Business Economic Success Team, and Dorothea Magao-Dowling is the chair of that group.
Thank you. Our team, as Karen said, is called the Business and Economic Restructuring Team, and it has four main purposes, which are to collect data about the district's businesses and markets, develop business retention, expansion, and recruitment strategies, develop property, create incentives for business property development. We have, at the moment, 4 projects that we've identified. The first we undertook a few months ago, which is simply reviewing the plans and work that have been done over the past few years, which have identified some of the ideas for economic development in Saline. It's important, we felt, to understand what has happened in the recent past before we launch into a new set of recommendations and ideas. The second task is updating the inventory of our downtown businesses, basically having the accurate information about the buildings, the people who are in them, the businesses on record and able to be accessed readily. The third was developing a business survey and communication strategy, which rolls into a recent 4th project. We recently submitted an application for funding for a comprehensive market analysis study of Saline, which is supported by Michigan Main Street. We hope to hear favorably that we receive those funds by the end of the month. Whether we do or not, we will be embarking on a market analysis study. The results and outcomes of that study will be data and information about our businesses, about opportunities, about the gaps that we may be able to fill by growing our existing businesses or attracting new investment. The information is meant to be shared with all of the community groups that are involved in any way in promoting Saline's economic development. That's quite a lot of work that we have ahead of us, and we're looking forward to getting going on it. Thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce Jill Durnan, who is the leader of the promotions team.
Good evening, everyone. As Dorothea said, I'm Jill Durnan. I'm the leader of the promotions team, and also, as Brittany said, Saline does like to party, so that's our team. And we do have 3 objectives on the promotions team. The first being of making Saline have a very variety of activities downtown, and that's what our major focus has been on the last 6 months. We had a very successful Oktoberfest. We have had a successful summer music series, and now we're focusing on Winterfest for January 26th, and then also the Music Under the Arch concert series at Stone Arch is kicking off. We have all 5 concert headliners booked. So the promotions for that will be coming out soon. Future events that we're working on is in the planning process is some kind of a barn dance hoedown type party for downtown, and then also a walking tour in conjunction with 2 of the other teams. So both the historic downtown buildings and the historic homes in the historic district. A second objective is to establish a unified image for the downtown. We are going to partner with the Business Economic Success Team to pin down a target market survey for all the downtown businesses. And then we're also going to be reviewing all the existing brands associated with downtown Saline, picking the strongest one and running with that one. The third objective is an overall marketing strategy that's still very young in the planning stages, but that is a very strong focus of the promotions team to get people to shop downtown and build their businesses downtown. And with that, I would like to introduce Rebecca Schneider, the leader of the design team.
Hi there. Thanks for letting us be here tonight to share our plans and hopes for 2013. The design team's main purpose is to beautify and improve the district, and we have several means by which the goals have been set by the board, and we do those through a number of means. One is through the education of historic preservation. So for 2013, we're hoping to put together an architectural treasure hunt, which would be a brochure that features pictures of different architectural elements in our downtown that people have to go find, which will get people looking around and appreciating all of the wonderful things we already have. The other element we hope to work on is a historic walking tour in conjunction with the promotions team and their Taste of Saline event that they want to put together. So we're going to work with trying to put together some information that people could, a self-guided walking tour, or in that day, a special walking tour that would have additional elements. So there'd be a kind of residual walking tour that we could use year-round, but we would enhance it for that day. The other element of education would be a Main Street Building Basics event, which would be in January. This is an event that is in partnership with the Michigan Main Street office, where we would invite our business and property owners downtown to come in and learn more about historic preservation and the principles of it and the benefits of it as well. So we'll be out promoting that event. It may happen January or February. We haven't set the date yet. In addition to education, we want to embark on some public improvements, and we're going to continue the Be Bloomin' program. And because I run that program, and I know many of the people in this room are sponsors, I want to thank you once again for the contributions you make. It's a wonderful program, and we received a lot of positive feedback from the flowers last year. We hope to continue that into this year. We hope to come up with some plans for replacing our trash receptacles downtown, or trash bunkers, as I like to call them. We think we could have something that's a little more aesthetically pleasing. And one of the other projects we'd like to take on is some sort of kiosk or public signage installment. Instead of the boards in front of Key Bank, which everyone relies on to get information, we'd like to find a more permanent way that we can share information that doesn't clutter up the corner. And finally, we have been asked by City Manager Todd Campbell to investigate some options and make some recommendations for holiday decorations. They're very charming, but they do wear out eventually, and we would like to be a part of coming up with what we could put in next. Another objective of the design team is to work on the development and gathering spaces, and as you know, we've been working, and David has been working on the alley project. We continue to move forward with that and hope that in the springtime we can have some outdoor seating in that space. And finally, our last objective is to do a review of ordinances within the district. And we have to first start with our board and our design team, because we have to know what's out there before we can start making recommendations on it. So we're going to do an internal review of the ordinances and also review the downtown master plan and streetscape plan, because they have some guidance for things that we should need to be aware of when we go forward. So thank you. I'm going to introduce Cindy again, because she's coming back, and this time she's wearing a different hat. She's the organization team chair.
Thank you, Rebecca. Saline Main Street cannot survive or can't even exist without volunteers and a diversified funding source. So that is the main purpose of the organization team. Our work plans include building the image of the organization so that we can educate the community about why this effort is so important and why we are all so passionate about it. We're going to do that through revising our website and making that even more robust than it is. It served a purpose as we were in the Route 12 to Main Street campaign, but now we really need to focus on downtown as well. Continue our Facebook and our Twitter and all of our social media that helped us so much throughout the campaign. Monthly news columns, you'll start seeing a monthly newsletter from our manager, Bob, and presentations out in the community. We did that through the campaign, and we're going to continue it and make sure that we're at the townships and all of the organizations and giving them an update as well. The second objective is to retain and recruit volunteers. Right now we have approximately 50 volunteers that are a mainstay within all of our teams. The promotions team has the largest team as you can expect. I think we're growing out of space again. But we're very fortunate to have very passionate, very committed volunteers, and many of you who are sitting in this room and up there are part of that, so thank you. We want to appreciate our volunteers as well as train them, so our program is going to involve all of that. Our final is developing a fundraising campaign, and that campaign is the work plan. There's several work plans in each of these objectives, as well as all of everyone that came up here. I think we have about 39 work plans that we're working on, and these are very detailed work plans. The fundraising will address corporate sponsorship, individual sponsorship, because we really want to help our residents understand how and why the heart of our community is so important to us and to the economic health of our community. And then we're going to also seek out grants and, of course, the government support, which we appreciate so much. That is it. We're open to any questions, unless you need to move along. Thank you for the time.
Does any council members have any questions? Thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you all for your hard work for our community.
Thank you.
Oh, nope. There's a young man that'll be using it after me. There's a gentleman who's going to be using it after me.
I think the next item on the agenda is not the fire station, actually. It's the economic development strategy from Spark. Luke Bonner is going to present that. Do you have a separate plug-in, or? Okay. That's okay. No, that's great. We need that for then later in the council meeting.
Let you plug in over here, and I'll take this over here.
Thank you.
So while we're waiting, just, I know there's some members in the audience from the EDC, and we passed out this report, which is also, I see Paul from Ann Arbor Spark. This is something the National League of Cities worked on last year. I think all the council also got it, and it sort of is very similar, not very similar, but it's all around the same theme around economic development, supporting entrepreneurs and small business, and it was something that the advisory council worked on in conjunction, which is a board that I was on, in conjunction with the SBA and the Kauffman Foundation and some others. So there's some really good data in there. And just for the EDC folks that are in the audience, and I know there's some members of the EDC on the council, and just for council, it's also another piece, I think, of this whole puzzle of putting. So there's a lot of great, I think, tools that we're getting tonight. That's all being presented, and the way that it's all going to be coordinated is going to be, I think, exciting but I think it's a really great opportunity. So I just want to make sure that everybody got a copy of that report, for those of you that in the audience too. So, and I think Luke's ready now, right?
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members of council. The Saline Main Street program is very, very exciting. It's nice to hear all of the effort that's being put into that, and I'm sure all of you are proud to see some of those efforts come into fruition. I'm extremely thankful, and on behalf of the Spark team, we're extremely thankful for the opportunity to work with the community on this particular plan. We spent the last several months researching and coming up with ideas and talking to business people and sort of validating our concepts to come to the point that we're at tonight. Specifically, the business development team at Spark, the Washtenaw County Business Development Team, which is 4 people, including myself, marketing, and then led by our CEO, Paul Krutko, who's in the audience tonight. And then also we have Carly Grobe, who was our intern this summer from the University of Michigan School of Architecture and Urban Planning, who's in the back, that also helped coordinate a lot of the efforts that were put into this strategic plan. So in terms of the time and energy and man hours that were put in, it was a pretty good collective effort, and we're pretty excited about what we're going to present tonight, and hopefully you all feel the same. So in terms of what kind of energized the focus and direction of our process and what we are developing as a concept for the city is what the mayor has been basically saying over and over and over again, that Saline is doing many things well in its effort to cultivate a healthy economic development environment. With Michigan's economic recovery underway, now is an ideal time to make strategic investments and position the community for another generation of success. We are a part of many efforts in the community, one of which you just saw, and the vision by this mayor and city council is certainly appreciated, and we took that to heart when moving forward with this project. In terms of undertaking the actual scope of research itself over the last several months, we did go through a pretty in-depth process of both meeting with community and business stakeholders and three different roundtable events. We did research from the public resources that were available to Spark currently, including looking at major industry patterns. Basically, we're seeing, as you all know, automotive and manufacturing in general has had quite a resurgence here the last 2 years to help lead the country to hopefully will be a long-endured recovery. We examine location quotients to validate that in terms of what are the industries that tend to be growing and adding the most jobs. We looked at the city's incentives and policy reviews for planning, for site plan review, for building permitting process, et cetera. We took a look at the current jobs data in comparison to some other locations that we compare ourselves to across the country. Obviously pulled out who are the top employers, who are doing the projects right now. We did review community assets, including the Main Street program, downtown Saline, and the industrial parks. And we did a local demographic review and also a real estate review of the community. Taking all this information, then our team went through a SWOT analysis, and I'm not going to go through every single detail, but we did as a team pull down the information from the business and communities, plus the information that we researched and put together the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the communities as we are sort of entertaining the process of building this plan, and came to a point of saying to ourselves, what's needed in the city of Saline to continue to move forward. What we basically decided was, let's not create sort of a new plan that would give a lot of potential pie-in-the-sky concepts and maybe deliver something that was potentially unattainable based on resources and personnel available at the city. What we decided to do is focus on maintaining, updating, and maximizing the existing assets in the community. So the three basic pillars that we foresee are areas that the city can continue to focus on over a number of years. And what you'll see tonight is more of a 12-month tactical plan that ultimately can be bit off in chunks over a short, midterm, and long-term period. But we felt aggressively with Spark support and working with the community and other partners that a lot of things can be implemented over the next 12 to 18 months. But focusing on these three areas we thought was extremely important. So I want to get into the actual strategies themselves and break down some very specific things the city can do over the next year. The first strategy, which was emphasizing customer service, we clearly saw from the community roundtable and business roundtable that the city of Saline prides itself on how it treats the companies in this community. And conversely, the business community is very well appreciative of the efforts of the community to help their businesses to grow and thrive here. So what we were thinking about was to continue to embrace a proactive approach with the companies, sort of meeting them at their level, understanding their needs and helping them solve their problems. We wanted to create a set of tools within the community that can continue to help those companies move along the growth process. And then obviously striving to anticipate business needs to align those needs with civic capacity, like I'd mentioned. What are the resources and staff available to community to put some of these things together? We identified more of a need to have what we're calling a business ambassador. Clearly this term can be customized or changed to however the city sees fit. But the business ambassador, in our mind, is more of a trained employee that can be the champion on behalf of both the city and the company itself when working them through a project. Ann Arbor Spark is an extension of the City of Saline for economic development efforts, but the way we sort of put it is when we're working with a company, they ultimately have to come through your doors and work with your staff to get through their process. So having somebody internally to sort of champion that through was extremely important. We identified a number of potential tools that can assist the city and the companies alike to move things forward. The biannual Saline Business Summit we thought would be an opportunity which came out in our roundtable discussions with the companies, that while Spark is kind of the front door for economic development for the city, there's clearly a desire from the business community to understand and know what's going on in local government more readily. They want to hear about the good things that are going on in the community. They certainly want to meet the elected officials and show their support there. So in doing so, we thought it was a nice opportunity that the city should consider to have a couple times a year sort of this summit that'll recognize the good things going on in the business community, tout the good things that are going on with the city, and Spark can support that in terms of how we can continue to support those companies. We can talk about those things as well. One thing in particular, and you'll see how some of these tie together, you know, clicker polling is a really nice way to get instant feedback from the audience that you're engaged with. So the concept here in these biannual summits is to have topics ready to roll out to the audience, to the business community, so that they can start to vote on them immediately and give true feedback right away, either to the efforts that are ongoing or to things that need to be done in the future. The Gold Key Service Program, moving on to the next headline, is something that we thought would really set the city of Saline above maybe some of the competitor communities. And what we are envisioning here is that business ambassador, as they approach businesses that want to do business here in the community, can actually work with them to develop more certainty for their process. So sit down, map out the timeline that it's going to take someone to get through the planning process, that's going to go through the building permitting process, what the fees and costs are associated with that, if there are incentives associated with the project, what's the timeline for getting those incentives improved, and essentially that ambassador can work as an internal project manager to give somebody a certain roadmap of how long and how much it's going to cost to do business with the city. One in particular area that we thought was lacking was just a simple doing business in Saline information packet, something that has kind of the ABCs of working with the city of Saline, who the elected officials are, what the emergency contacts are, where does a business need to go for certain things. Definitely the ambassador information needs to be in there, but something that can be developed and readily distributed. The Business Collaborative, and this is sort of what ties back into the biannual business summit. The Business Collaborative in our minds is a dedicated volunteer group of companies in the community that are going to meet 4 times a year to look at and address issues in the city of Saline from a business perspective. The issues and opportunities that arise from that, this is something that the business ambassador would manage. The opportunities and issues that would arise from that would then go to the biannual Saline Summit to then be addressed. So the concept is having real-time, continuous feedback from the business community so that the city can make changes when it needs to do that. The second strategy, which is a little, you can't see that too well on the overhead, maximizing existing assets. Here we wanted to make sure, and it's going on obviously with the Main Street program, just ensuring that all facilities supporting infrastructure are of high quality and well maintained by implementing a couple of programs. The Promote Saline Business Team, consideration for business improvement districts, corporate parent visits in terms of company locations that are outside of the state of Michigan and outside of the U.S., and partnering with the Saline school system. The first item, Promote Saline Business Team. There are some excellent companies with global reach in this community that are of varying industries, automotive, defense, medical devices, et cetera. Within those teams, there are business development people that are going to other parts of the world to market themselves and their products to gain customers. So part of the concept here is to go work with those teams internally at these companies and have them almost be an extended sales team on behalf of the community, making sure that they understand the value proposition of doing business in Saline and that they're actually armed with information that they can pass out to companies that they're actually meeting with, just to promote the area as a good place to do business. The business improvement districts itself. So on this one, we were focusing really on the industrial park. I believe the roads currently are maintained by the community, if I'm not mistaken. And typically, what you're seeing today are more business associations for these industrial parks, where there's a group of companies that oversee the maintenance of those roads. we thought it was a good opportunity from a competitive standpoint to look at this as an opportunity to put those businesses together in the industrial parks to make sure that that infrastructure is constantly being monitored and upgraded when need be. A business improvement district has the means through a special assessment district to levy an additional assessment upon property owners to eventually do a bond, if possible, to make those improvements. So looking at things like fiber, for example, is that the level it needs to be, making sure that the roads and the approaches are at the level it needs to be, as all of these companies are entertaining corporate customers from all across the world, and so that needs to continue to have a good face for the community. The corporate parent visits, we do have actually a very recent example. Forcia, obviously purchasing the ACH plant. Our CEO, Paul Krutko, was in France this summer and had an opportunity to meet with the corporate headquarters in Paris. That goes over extremely well for the corporate entities that may not have been to the city of Saline or have not been here recently. So to have a partnership between Ann Arbor Spark and the community to actually go out, and whether it's domestic corporate headquarters or international corporate headquarters, to make the introduction, to say thank you, and potentially identify new opportunities for new business investment in the community by doing that. The Saline Schools Partnership, basically what we had found out was the school district definitely wants to partner, I think, with industry more than it has. And there are several different models to do that, one of which that we were looking at in particular for this strategy was more of the virtual global trade mission model, which is done nationally in a lot of different communities. What that does is actually bring a team of students out of the school district to partner with companies in the community to help basically develop business plans. It's a competition of sorts. The companies then basically serve on a panel with local investors, with bankers that can see all of these different student presentations. And the advantage is, from an industry standpoint, they're giving back to the community because they're working with the local school district and basically the future leaders of the region and the state. And from a student perspective, they get to understand just how global the economy is, and can come up with some pretty cool ideas and solutions to help some of the companies they're actually working with. That can be done in a lot of different ways, but we thought that was a pretty unique opportunity that should be followed up on. Third and final strategy was activating and supporting the local business community. The Main Street program hit on this a lot during their presentation, but there's a lot of great local business in Main Street, in other parts of the community, and there's a little bit of a gap which they identified in terms of the local support that's available to some of them, especially from a startup perspective. One of the areas that we had talked about with the mayor early on, and now we're starting to look at this at Ann Arbor Spark, there is quite a bit of the workforce, up to 10 or 11% of the workforce, that is a sort of a home-based business. And why that's important to recognize is that these guys or women are creating business that's coming in from outside of the community, whether it's engineers, marketing companies, what have you. And so the best way to ultimately get in touch with these folks, which is hard to do because they're stay-at-home businesses, is through some kind of billing cycle, water bill, for example, and polling those people and surveying those folks to see what kinds of things they're doing, what kind of support can be added to help them to continue to grow. We discussed working more with the chamber. So we did have a good conversation with them, and I know that they're doing a lot more to engage with the business community. But in this particular case, we looked at the chamber model and trying to use that to create more of a virtual incubator environment for the small companies in the community or startups in the community. So basically in chambers, there's paid membership by businesses that want to be a part of the chamber. They do that so they can get additional business. They do that because it's the right thing to do. They spend a lot of time networking and mingling with other companies to accomplish this. What we're basically proposing is changing that model to be a little bit more proactive, to be more pro bono, to actually put a business in front of another business to do real work for them, and then let the companies decide how they'll do business together. And that sort of flips the model right now, where a lot of cards are exchanged over a cocktail, but we want to take that down to more of a level of the expertise that's defined within the chambers to provide real company assistance. I'm not going to touch too much on the Saline Main Street program because you saw a presentation from them. The only thing that we would advocate for in terms of funding opportunities is to strongly look at a principal shopping district, which has been implemented and deployed in a lot of Main Street downtown areas across the state successfully. What that essentially does is provide funding to the business community, because that board has to be comprised of the businesses within that district, but put funding in their hands and let them sort of decide their own fate in terms of how they're going to market themselves and that sort of thing. And then finally, in this strategy, there's a fairly new tool that's come up out of a Silicon Valley-based company. The tool's called Size Up. And what Size Up essentially does is allow local companies to benchmark themselves against national competition. So they can see strategically what kind of investments they might have to make, what other markets should they potentially be in, and to understand the competition to a level that they can improve their own companies, obviously to increase sales and profits. It's an online tool. It uses a lot of both public and private databases to farm that information. I've seen it. We're contemplating using it at Spark to assist companies that we work with, but clearly something that could be to the benefit of the small business community here in Saline. The last page, I just wanted to bring this up. So this information, obviously, I think would be pretty important for the public at large and for the business community at large. This is one area that we just hadn't completed yet because we wanted to just get good feedback in terms of where this could be from a repository standpoint, whether it's on the chamber website, whether it's on the city's website, or the Main Street program website, et cetera. So we just want to, as we're working along with you guys, to make sure that we're putting this in the right place, that it can be viewed publicly, and so we can still determine where that's going to go. Oh, sorry, wrong arrow. And that concludes my presentation. Again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to work on this, and I'm available for questions if there are any. So.
My comment, I guess, is I appreciate the efforts that you all have put into this. And I noticed as you're touching on various points that they impact the Chamber of Commerce and the schools and Saline Main Street and the city. And I think there needs to be a system to integrate the activities of all of those folks so that we don't have individuals in the various organizations, each one going off and doing a piece of it without it being tied together. That seems to always be a problem with these studies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another one that I would hate to see just set off on the bookshelf somewhere and gather dust.
The fun thing about the process, and especially the roundtable part that we went through, is that those folks were at the table with us as we were talking about these things. And clearly, in terms of like one of the strengths of Spark is to be able to convene and collaborate multiple partners. So clearly, this is not sort of a go-it-alone approach, but really leveraging the assets, the existing assets in the community to help the city move forward its economic development vision. And so some of these things were brought up at our roundtable discussion, and I think they were openly received. So certainly being able to work with them and integrate them in the process is vitally important to this initiative. Agreed. Jim?
Mr. Bonner, I want to thank you for an excellent presentation. I do have a question. It's a great study. Who's going to implement this study? How much is Spark going to do? How much is the city supposed to do? And where's the funding going to come for maybe having such a business ambassador?
Well,
I'm just
tell you,
curious what Spark's role is. You gave us a good plan.
Sure.
But now, who's going to do her, and how much is Spark going to do for us?
Well, I think the mayor and city manager can answer some of those, but I will tell you that just up front, we've looked at sort of shepherding, mentoring, managing the process for the city, and making sure that there's continued direction from Spark on that. And we have talked about some other opportunities to help with this, but I'll leave the rest of the discussion to the mayor.
I would just say that we hired Spark to give us a plan. The implementation is up to the city and the community in partnership. And I know Mr. Campbell's talked to Spark, if you want to elaborate further, but really we just hired them for the plan document, not for implementation. That would be the next step. So
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Exactly as Luke said, working with the city, working with Spark as a mentor or shepherd basis to help us to push us forward. It says, I think it's 12-month plan. I think, and we've had discussions, Luke and I have, that there's enough. I mean, I think there's a lot of great items. This is, even though it's small in stature, it's jam-packed full of some great things to do, and we want to push forward with those with existing staff, because you're absolutely right. The resources, the lack of resources, are going to push us down that road, and that's okay. Through this, the recent reorganization of the treasurers and finance departments, we've talked, Kathy Korfman and myself are going to be trying to do our best to lead the charge with this. And again, working with, as Mr. Rhodes said, it is certainly going to be vital to partner with our current partners and make sure we're all going down the same direction or pretty close to it, as opposed to going off in different directions. And so it's going to be a community effort, but we will be leading the charge.
Mr. Gearba.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I think the EDC board and we supported this was trying to look at a plan that was going to bring forward all the areas, especially even some of the ideas that you introduced, such as principal shopping districts, which could help deal with our issues on the far ends of town where there have been concerns about us putting so much investment into the Main Street program. This helps address those kind of ideas. And part of this idea is, I think this gives us, like you said, the model to do it. I do have the concerns about the ambassador, who we identify how that's going to reach out, because that is going to be a key person that is basically going to present us to business people, and they have to present themselves in that manner in order to tree and basically give us a good view. The other aspect of this I would like to hope is that when we look at it for the board's perspective, EDC and all that, we're going to be involved more than we have in the past, because I think that's the expertise on that board will provide us the more leadership and the individuals that can reach out. And this is something I think that even Mr. Marl has mentioned that he would like to see us as a goal. So I'm looking forward to helping this bring us forward and actually trying to produce a more beneficial product for the city.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next, we have citizen comment on agenda items under the Open Meetings Act. Any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question on items that appear on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. If there's no citizen comments, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Move to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Second.
Move Morrow, second Roth. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Under public hearings, item 12-170, this is the Saline EDC Limited Obligation Revenue Refunding Bonds for Evangelical Homes of Michigan project. We need a motion to acknowledge receipt of the November 9, 2012 memo from Roger Sweats of Clark Hill and the resolution of intent to issue refunding bonds for Evangelical Homes of Michigan Brecken Village project as adopted by Saline's EDC.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Second.
Move to Har, second Peters. And is there any questions? Mr. Morrow.
Not a question, Mayor, but I need to comment. I'll be abstaining from this motion and the 3 subsequent motions because of my affiliation with Evangelical Homes of Michigan as a Board of Directors member.
Do we have discussion, questions on this memo? No questions? Okay, so we have a motion to acknowledge receipt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
And we have 1 abstention from Mr. Morrow. Motion carries. We need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Move Gearbox, second Terhar. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Public hearing is now open. Do you have any public comments?
Move to close.
Second.
Move Gearbox, second Terhar. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I know we have an abstention, so I'm not asking for the abstention every time, but you can hear it, right, Diane? The public hearing is now closed, and we have a motion to approve and adopt or not adopt the resolution approving issuance of EDC refunding bonds as submitted.
I move to approve and adopt.
We have a motion by Mr. Roth. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gearba. Discussion. Mr. Gearba.
And this is pretty straightforward. When this came before EDC, it's basically, they're looking to refinance, basically, like we are doing in the city to save money and help to address. This has been something that we did many years ago, but at this point in time, it's a part of the community. We basically supported at that point, and I have no problem supporting this finance. If there are any costs or whatever, I believe we had an agreement that they would incur, but I don't believe that's going to be an issue for it.
Correct.
And the only concern, one issue was that potentially it has a issue with our ability to bond, but at this point, it's not significant enough that it would impact it. I believe if Mr. Campbell could address with that issue.
That's correct.
Is there any further questions on the motion? If not, do we have a all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention?
Yes.
Mr. Morrow? Motion carries. Item under unfinished business, item 12-162, this would be engagement of legal firm to provide city attorney services. Our first motion would be to receive the letters from Clark Hill dated November 19th and McGraw-Morris 11/17, and a verbal report from city manager Todd Campbell. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Morrow, do we have a second?
Second.
Peters, I think, is that? Sorry, an echo chamber. Okay, so, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick summary of the process. City went out for, well, we had a review team for the city attorney services, and that was made up of City Council Member Gearbach, City Clerk Hill, City Treasurer Bennett, Police Chief Rinnick, City Assessor Skull, DPW Director Fordyce, and myself. We sent out a request for proposals, RFP, received 14 proposals back. The team reviewed that, narrowed that down to the 5 finalists, the 5 firms, in no particular order. The 5 finalists were Barr Anhut, Clark Hill, Foster Swift, Johnson, Rosati, Schultz, and Jopik, and McGraw-Morris. The City Council and Review Team this past, most recent past Saturday, November 17th, received 5 presentations from those 5 finalists. The result was essentially consensus was the top 2, and again, not in any necessary order, but Clark Hill and McGraw-Morris. With a couple questions that the council asked me to just to ask of both firms, which I did, and of course those are here. The letter that the mayor mentioned from Clark Hill, as well as the email from McGraw-Morris. I'll review. I had the McGraw anyway. So questions of McGraw-Morris were just a simple clarification if the lead attorney, Mr. McGraw, was available for the both first and third Mondays. As you can see, he confirmed that yes, they are. I also had expressed a concern with their labor, quality of labor attorneys, and so was directed to ask them about if in their billing, as far as they submitted a retainer, an annual retainer that covered, it was pretty exhaustive, as you all recall, and asked if by pulling out the labor, the collective bargaining and day-to-day personnel matters, how that would impact the annual retainer. The result was a reduction from the $125,000 annual retainer, if just simply pulling out the collaborative bargaining negotiations would be from 125 to 110, and then if we pull everything related to personnel and labor, that would go from 125 down to 100,000. And then The other question of Clark Hill was to have them look at their proposed billing method and make that more comparable to McGraw-Morris, which they did. And as you can see, they have provided an amended with very similar, mirrors McGraw-Morris pretty well, very exhaustive list under a retainer, an annual retainer of $124,980. But they believe that there's still room for cost savings to the city, so they would want to look at that, review that after the first 12 months, because they do believe there's some efficiencies that could save even more. So I believe that was the request of the council, and so it's before you tonight. Of course, members of the team are here, myself, if you wanted us to participate in a discussion or any of that nature.
Any questions for Mr. Campbell?
No.
No questions? Okay, we have a motion to receive. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have a motion to approve or not approve the engagement as the firm to provide legal services for the city of Saline commencing January 1, 2013 for an annual retainer at X amount for a 2-year period to service city attorney to authorize or not authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with, after review by legal counsel, to be retained for this purpose. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the engagement of Clark Hill, but I'm going to need some assistance from staff in filling in the other blanks in this motion.
124,980. Yep, it would be 124,980. Do we have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, so the motion would read to approve or not approve the engagement of Clark Hill as a firm to provide legal services for the city of Saline commencing January 1, 2013, and an annual retainer of $124,980 for a 2-year period to serve as city attorney, to authorize or not authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Clark Hill after review by legal counsel to be retained for this purpose. Discussion. Mr. Morrow.
Well, as the mover of this motion, well, let me begin tonight by thanking all those who applied for the city attorney's position, and especially the 5 who presented on Saturday. I think all 5 would do a decent job representing the city. However, I move that the city engage with Clark Hill because the breadth and depth of their experience and expertise I think makes them unmatched amongst their competitors. And whether we're talking about assisting the city with collective bargaining agreements, whether it's representing the city at the Michigan Tax Tribunal, or whether it's providing counsel on a daily basis, I'm confident that they will do an exceptional job. And that's why I moved that we engage them for the next 2-year period.
Further discussion? There's no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12-157, this is a participation in Washtenaw County 196 Transit Authority, and I believe Mr. Ford is in the audience. We're going to get an update on how things are going. I know it's been a roller coaster.
It's been a roller coaster, but there's a lot of positive things to say. Excuse me. Over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, we've been involved in this countywide effort to educate folks about transit, hear what people have to say, and really we created a 30-year vision for the future and also a 5-year implementation plan. We went out, we created a financial task force, district advisory councils, a technical group, a leadership group, and we really, I think, have helped heighten the understanding of transportation throughout the county. We were embarking on a countywide process. Some folks have decided to opt out of that process. The Ann Arbor City Council also did that. But since that time, and I would have been here last week, but we met with a core constituent of folks that were very much interested in continuing the discussion, consisting of Pittsfield, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti Township, Ypsilanti City, and a few others that were keen on wanting to be part of the process. So if I have an ask from you tonight is to keep involved. We know that there are still a lot of interested people about transportation, wanting to see transportation continue and thrive. We've got a very interested and exciting group still wanting to have that discussion. We're meeting with them individually and collectively. We've got some additional meetings set, and we ask to extend that as well to you to continue that discussion. Obviously, what you opted into is not in existence right now. We're looking to create a core group, and Saline is definitely part of that core. So we ask that you participate. We'll be reaching out to you and meeting collectively and individually to make sure that the things that you've asked for can still be incorporated going forward. So all's not lost. I know that there's some folks that may say that, but I can tell you by the folks that represented the core group last time that we were meeting, which was last week, everybody showed up. Everybody was engaged. Everybody was excited, and they wanted to see more transportation.
So can you guys have any questions for Mr. Ford? Mr. Roth?
I was just wondering who is presently a part of the core group?
Pittsfield, Ann Arbor, the mayor of Ann Arbor was there, Ypsilanti Township, Ypsilanti City, Dexter Village was there, Ann Arbor Township, they were there, but I can tell you those core folks were in the discussions, wanting to continue dialogue, and we were meeting to talk a little bit more about what the plan and the footprint could look like going forward. So that's where our focus is right now, where that core focus is going to go and who's going to participate. And everybody seemed to be willing and wanting and feeling that it was important to get something done.
Mr. Harper?
Just comment, I would certainly hope that Saline could be involved in that planning and discussion as well.
We'll definitely include you and reach out and be meeting with you.
What about Mylan? Weren't they?
Mylan is still a consideration as well. We are really focusing on the core. We've got a good start. We've got a lot of good plans, a lot of good input, and we want to continue to consolidate that and work the best we can. So anybody that's continuing to want to express interest, we're there for them, and we'll continue to work with them.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any further questions for Mr. Ford? Todd, do you? Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So I don't even know if we need to do this if it doesn't exist, but should we do the motion to rescind if it doesn't exist? Sort of a technicality, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I
Okay,
mean,
so we need a motion to rescind the action taken on October 15, 2012 to opt in to the new 196 Transit Authority and to withdraw from the new 196 Transit Authority.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Mugira, second to her. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, item 12-171, the Eagle Scout Project Community Sign at Fire Hall. It's a presentation by Andrew Bonzig. Oh, yeah, so for council's information, I know we got something in our packet, but we have an updated presentation that was on the table tonight.
They already, they have It's not coming up. Hmm? I was trying to send it. Usually you-
Yeah. Do you all have a copy of the presentation? All right.
Yeah.
Can't get it to display on the screen. Anyway, I'll continue without it. I'm Andrew Bonzak. I'm from Saline Boy Scout Troop 416, and I'm working on my Eagle project. And if you look at the project summary slide, I will be leading the reconstruction of the sign outside of the fire station. The current sign has been wearing out over time, and it's obviously in need of replacement. The wood is wearing, and the hinge to open the sign isn't functioning as it should. And we are planning to make a sign that is wider than the current one. We will also plan to do new landscaping around the sign to make it more aesthetically pleasing and improve the appearance of the corner. And then you can continue on to look at the project benefits. The current sign is used by a lot of residents in Saline to display information, and it would be a lot easier for them if they had a new sign. With better landscaping around the sign, it would improve the appearance of the corner and hopefully improve the visibility at the intersection as well. The current project cost is projected at just under $2,000, and we are planning for a time frame of the project to begin the removal of the current sign in spring of 2013, and then hopefully have it replaced by summer of 2013. I have as my project mentor, Mr. Sally from my Boy Scout troop, and the project beneficiary is Chief Heft. And if you keep looking on the slides, there are some initial renderings and designs as well from the project, including a CAD design and some sketches that we had. And we're seeking for the approval, the council approval for the plan to proceed with the sign replacement. Thank you.
Andrew, while we're waiting, I had a couple of questions. Will the sign be lit?
Yes, we are planning to incorporate some lighting to, like the current sign has outside lighting, and we're hoping to also keep that with the new sign.
Oh, we have an idea.
All right.
Because this is an excellent PowerPoint presentation. We were thinking maybe could we use the camera on the table like we do for land use plans or site plans? Because I know you put a lot of work into this, and it's very clear from your work.
I might need to use one of your copies just because I don't have a...
Mine's single-sided.
Oh, hers is single side, so it'll be easier to work with.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll just start off with the renderings of the sign.
Do you need a hand mic? Because we have a hand mic. Is that...
Let's see if we can, it's doing something right now.
Oh, it is?
It's over there.
There it is.
No, that's that.
That's the table picture.
Right.
Still looks pretty good.
Showing up on the,
Yeah.
I think I can work with this. So here we have the 3D rendering that I made during the initial design of the sign. And this was just to give us an idea of the image. And then on the next page, I have an overlay of the possible positioning for the sign, what it might look like replaced. And here we have an up-close sketch of the design we had in mind. with approximate dimensions, and then a refined CAD design with better dimensions, including the foundation that was done by my dad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Andrew?
Mayor.
Mr. Rhodes?
I had a couple other questions while you're still up there, Andrew. And first off, I think it's a great project, and it's going
Thank
to
you.
really improve that location in our postings. Is it going to be a double-sided sign?
Yes, we hope to make it double-sided, just like the one that is there right now.
Okay, and then since it's a wider sign, I guess the intention would be that there would be two
Yeah,
postings?
most likely space for 2 posters on each side.
Okay, and then the last question, for me anyway, is who controls the postings?
Does that run by Chief Heft before it's posted out?
Should. The chamber does it now.
Right.
And having the opportunity to put 2 signs in might help Main Street also with some of their information. So I just wanted to say that Andrew's done a good job. He's been working on this for a while, so I'm sure he's thinking right now, what did Chief have to get him into? But he's handled it well. So it's a good spot. It's a good corner. The sign's already there. We're just replacing it. So I think there's a lot of opportunities.
So is it basically going to be like kitty corner to the corner so that you can see coming
Yeah, at the
east and west,
intersection.
basically?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see
So it's
it
going to
from
be,
each
it's
way.
not going to be actually in the same layout, the same setup it is right now then?
It's going to be in the same spot that the current sign is. We're not planning to move it any farther or closer to the intersection.
But you can't see the backside of it from,
No, you can see, so you can see it from Michigan Ave, and you can see it from Harris Street. So right now, it actually gets pretty good visibility.
Yeah.
Having it on an angle like this on the corner.
right.
So now, I guess I'm,
It's not going to be exactly in the same place. It's going to have to be facing a little bit different, right? Because you can't really see the backside of the sign from,
If I remember correctly, the visibility wasn't too bad, but we can go out and look again and consider moving it, maybe the angle a bit more. But in terms of towards the building or away from the building, we aren't going to move it
right.
from where its current
I
position.
think it just might need to be angled a little bit. You might want to put like a stake or something out
Yeah.
so people know what you're talking about. But, because having it two-sided is, I think, great too, so.
Mhm.
Okay, any further questions for Andrew? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. So it'd be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the November 13th, 2012 memo from City Superintendent Engineer Rubel and the presentation by Andrew Bonzik to approve or not approve the plan submitted by Andrew Bonzik for replacing the community sign at the fire hall, and to authorize or not authorize Andrew Bonzik to proceed with a sign replacement under the direction of City Superintendent Engineer Rubel, subject to final review and issuance of a sign permit from the Saline Building Inspector, including review of the sign application form, site layout for setback, and construction details, to authorize or not authorize waiving the building permit fee for this project.
So move to approve, authorize.
Second.
Move Rhodes, second Tahar. Discussion. I just, again, like to commend the initiative of our a future Eagle Scout on your work, and you didn't make a pitch for donations for supplies or anything like that. You want to come back up and make a pitch? Come back up, because I understand from your presentation, you didn't get a chance to show that, but there are some costs involved with this, which would be building materials, and I think if you explain the nature of your project and what you want to talk a little bit about what an Eagle Scout project entails.
The usual process for an Eagle Scout project is running through donations, which can be raised through the community at churches, at the troop itself, or just from anywhere in the community. So we will also provide tools and for the project ourselves, and hopefully receive donations of materials from other places around the community.
Great. And what's the time frame for the project?
I said we'll start removal of the sign in spring of 2013 and finish the replacement by the end of the summer of 2013.
And if somebody wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
my email is chinaguy9@gmail.com, and my cell phone is 734-780-5620.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work.
The chief has a comment.
And we're going to use the Friends of the Saline Fire Department to put the money. So if anybody wants to leave cash or write a check tonight, Friends of the Saline Fire Department will help them out.
Great.
Tran probably will help us.
Great, okay. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to authorize, and authorize. Any further discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 12, 172, the Saline Salt Flats History Trail. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the October 19, 2012 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs and the November 12, 2012 letter from Saline Area Historical Society, and to authorize or not authorize the Parks Commission to pursue this project.
I so move. Acknowledge the receipt and authorize.
Move Roth, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Gearbach. Mr. Peters, I understand you have a presentation?
Yes, I do.
PowerPoint?
I have the table like the last one I had.
Okay, great.
Well, it's always difficult to follow Boy Scout.
Do you want the handheld mic?
Was it that part?
Yeah, just flip, there's a switch on the bottom.
Hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Because it's always tough to follow a Boy Scout. That was a good job, and it looks like a great project.
Away from the other mic.
My name is Jim Peters, and I'm council liaisons to the Parks Department, so I'll take off my council hat tonight and put on my Parks hat. And we have a very exciting project lined up that we're working on over at the Parks Commission. I'd like to share some of the details with you tonight. I'm kind of old school, so I have the
So we're going to have a mastodon coming out of the...
As we all know that
Build
good
mess.
parks are good business. They attract families, they attract businesses, and businesses that look at towns to bring their business into town. Of course, they want their employees to be happy in town, so parks have a business side to them, and hopefully this idea tonight will help Saline with that component to the parks. Before I start, I see we've got Bob Lane here tonight. Now, much of what I know about this is from Bob. He's done years of research on the salt springs in Saline. Bob, could you stand up or raise your hand or something and just say hi? Because he's done years and years of research and a really fabulous job. And if you go on to the website, just Google Saline Salt Springs, and you'll see Bob's writings and his papers, and they're really, I think they're fascinating. So we'll get started here. And I think I've lived in town 23 years, 24 years now, and we say Saline. How many times have we said Saline here tonight? Maybe 50, 60 times. And why are we called Saline? And I've never seen any kind of a monument or a sign in town that says anything about our heritage or why we're called Saline. We were talking about this at the Parks meeting one night, and one of the Parks members said, well, we should be doing something. So I went home and I Googled Saline Salt Springs. I got Bob's writing, and it got me to think about the project. So let's start back, way back, why we're called Saline. First of all, the park spot we're talking about is park or historic trail. It's a little section of land that the city owns right now, right there. It's the waste treatment plant is to the north, and the DNR fish ponds is to the south. Does everybody know where that's at? It's a little piece of city property. We own it. It's about 12 to 15 acres right now sitting idle, and it's a floodplain, so it can't be developed for much of anything. But that whole area is where the original salt springs were at. We'll cover this in a minute. Where did the salt come from? We're always talking about. This is the Earth. 600 million years ago, Michigan was on the equator. It was part of a shallow sea. And it was, you can see Michigan, the outline of Michigan I've got here. It was surrounded by coral reefs, and that shallow sea kept filling up and evaporating and leaving behind layers of salt. And over the millennia, millions of years in continental drift, Michigan has moved up towards that today. But that salt's still there. In fact, that's some of it right there. It's the same thing. Morton Salt up in Manistee, Michigan, they simply drill down to that ancient seabed that's 600 million years old. They flush it up with a brine, dry it out, process it, and they package it. So when you have some salt with dinner tomorrow night, I think that's 600 million year old salt that you're putting in your French fries. So that's where the salt came from. Why is it important to us? Because when the glaciers receded 12,000 years ago, primitive man moved in, Paleo-Indians. These were different Indians, different than the Indians we know today, like the Potawatomis. These were different peoples. And they came in before the forest. There weren't even trees yet, but there were vast grasslands. And the huge herbivores would move in to feed on these grasslands. And they especially came to Saline because, like most animals, they needed that salt for their diet, to ingest the salt and the minerals. So the hunters, like the saber-toothed tiger, the wolf, and man, would follow these huge herds. And you can see this, we have here a mammoth. And this would have been a common sight right here in Saline. You could have gone down to Willis Road and Saline Milan Road, and you could have seen camels, rhinoceros, mammoth, mastodons. They were all here. And you can still find they still find their bones down there today. And some very strange animals too besides these. We won't go into that, but there's some very bizarre ones. So this is the Paleo-Indian. And Saline has been inhabited down around those salt flats for 12,000 years. People have been here. And what these people used to do, the Paleo-Indians, one of their practices was to bury their dead in mounds. They were mound builders. This mound isn't ours. This is in Missouri, I think, someplace. However, we do have our own mound. And this is in Saline, down by the fish ponds. And there it is. Can you see it? It's a winter shot. You can kind of see the crest of the hill. We had an archaeologist from Michigan, U of M, come down. Bob, if I get this mixed up, please jump in.
Hinsdale.
From Hillsdale, okay. And
Hinsdale.
And verify that is indeed could be a Paleo-Indian burial mound.
Yeah, the old map.
Yeah, the old map. So that's pretty special. That's a real piece of history. And a lot of our neighboring municipalities, they don't have anything like this. This is unique to Saline. Now, about 1500, about the time Columbus was discovering the New World, we had a new wave of immigrants come into Saline. These were the Potawatomi Indians. They came in around 1500 AD, and they forced out the Paleo-Indians. It's part of their oral history. And they, too, were attracted to the salt springs. They would hunt the animals attracted to salt springs, and they would trade the salt to neighboring tribes. So it was a revenue source for the Potawatomis. This is a map, a little hard to read, but you can see here in the center, this is a map of Indian trails and paths. And look right here in the center, how many of those paths go right there, and that's the salt springs. That's Saline right there. So you can see how important Saline was back in ancient days. Those were migration paths, Indian trails. It was a center for activity back then. Here comes our first European influence. And these were the French traders came through in 1634, and they named the river Saline River. Not that the river was salty, but the river was the avenue you took to get to the salt springs in this area. This is an interesting character here. This is Robert de La Salle. He was a Jesuit priest from France who dropped out of the priesthood and came to Michigan. And he was convinced he could find a new route to China here in the New World. And he thought that maybe Michigan held the key because it had all the rivers and Great Lakes. I know Councilman Roth, you just came back from China. You made trouble finding it, did you? No. Well, he never did find it. In fact, he died trying. But you can see, he literally walked across Michigan. And he came right through Washtenaw County. So if he was following the established trails of those days, he would have walked right through the salt springs. This is William Harrison, whose father actually signed the Declaration of Independence, and this man here went on to be 9th President of the United States. And he was in Saline also, and he was here as a general at the time. At the time, it was the War of 1812. The United States was at war with England. England was allied with the Potawatomis, and they sent out a number of troops and an encampment here in the Salt Springs area to keep a lid on things, to make sure the English didn't stir up too much trouble. We're not sure exactly how many troops, because maybe it's been 2,000 for maybe as long as 2 years. And Brian, I think you're going to help us with some resources out of Lansing to try to firm up some of those figures. But this is kind of critical. This was a large camp for a long period of time, and we think possibly these troops are also were used when they moved down to Monroe to fight the Battle of River Raisin. This is Joseph Francis. Joseph Francis was a surveyor before Orange Risden. He came in 1819, and he actually documented the Salt Springs. He mapped them out. And he also located and discovered Harrison's encampment, the clearing where the 1812 encampment was at. And this fellow here, he left, we have one of his maps. Here's one here. And you can see right here in the corner is where he's documented the Salt Springs. Now, there were many Salt Springs, more than just one, up and down that stretch of river. And the other day, Bob and I, we had an old map. We had tracked down another one. It was a week ago we were out with the old map with Lance, looking up some of the old Salt Springs. So this is pretty hard evidence of how important the area was, because back then in those days, salt had to be brought a long way across the Appalachians by wagon. It was sold by the bushel and was very expensive. So if you could ever find salt west of the Appalachians, it was rather important. And the surveyors were mandated by the government to document this, because there were federal funds to develop salt works anywhere west of the Alleghenies. The first English settlers in the area, 1824, were down at the Salt Springs, not up at the Four Corners. They first started down there, the first English-speaking folks that came in. So we tend to think of history here in St. Louis, at least I used to, Orange Risden on up, and that's only 188 years. But there's 12,000 years of history before that. So the first Europeans were moving in here at 1824, and again, they settled down by the Salt Springs. Now here comes our friend Orange Risden, 1832, and he named the town Saline after the Saline River, and the Saline River was named after the Salt Springs. So again, I keep bringing up the Salt Springs because that's how critical they were to this part of the state. This is the old York Mill. It was a flour mill. Let me get my dates right. It stood up until 1940. And it was built back in 1832. It was a water-powered mill, later converted to steam in 1881. In fact, if you go down to the fish ponds, the DNR fish ponds right now, you can still see some remnants of the old foundation and the old raceway from the water wheel. So there's still pieces of it down there. That's the old York Mill. These are early salt miners. Like again, there were federal money available for people who could produce salt out in this part of the world. And these folks bought some property. Let me see here. They bought 12 acres of property. They were speculators. And what they would do was they would take and drill wells and bring up a brine, just like Morton Salt does, and dry this brine out in big kettles and take the water out, and there you'd have your salt, and they would sell that. And but the venture never was successful. It failed. I think they had too much competition from Ypsilanti. And it was back in 1940 that Mr. Finch, who owned the property and had his tractor, his wheel fell into this old mine. And he found some piping and some other evidence of the mine was out there. So again, we have this on a map. All down to Salt Springs area. Here is his map. X marks the spot. That's where his tractor fell through the old mine. Racetrack. There used to be a racetrack down there. 1893. The Saline Driving Association built a half-mile track near the York Mill. It was stated in a news article that it was one of the best tracks in the county, one of the fastest in Michigan, and it cost 25 cents to get in. I don't think there's any evidence of that down there anymore, is there? I think that's long gone. Here's an aerial that Bob Sun took, who was a pilot. And you can see in yellow, that's the outline of the piece of property we're talking about. There's a fish ponds to the south, and just above that, up in here, you have the sanitation plant. And that's just it's a beautiful little piece of property. I've got some pictures here in the middle in a minute. And the city owns it. It's not going to cost us anything. And there are several ways we're exploring now how to access this piece of property, but it's heavily wooded, and I've got another slide here that shows, it's a little hard to read. Anybody wants to get with me after the meeting, I'd be glad to sit down with you. These are all different points of interest. A lot of these are salt springs in the area. And here's the Indian Mound. You can see a little dark area right down in the corner, that dark spot, that's the Indian Burial Mound. The old York Mill was right here. We've got a variety of salt weeps and springs in the area. And so this is nicely situated right between Curtis Park and Wilderness Park. So it's in a nice spot. Now, here's the exciting part. It doesn't look like much, I know. But I was down there maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago just looking at this piece of property. I was thinking about trail systems. Where can we mark out some trail systems down there? And I come across this boggy, swampy part. It had kind of an odd look to it. It's kind of gray, not much growing around except some specialized grasses. And it was running real slow, and I thought, oh, could that be a salt weep? So I had a bottle of Absor Pure Water on me, emptied it out, and I took a sample, and I sent it in to be tested, and it came back 40 times higher in chloride, which has a lot of salt components in it, than your normal well water. So this indeed could be a living, actual, working salt spring, which we thought were extinct. We didn't know we had any more left. And this has been a very dry year. In a wetter year, this may be even more active, or maybe more down there. But this actual salt spring is located on the very piece of property we're proposing that the History Trail goes on. So to me, this is just like a gift to Saline. This property is beautiful. It has an active salt spring on it. It's right by the river. It's wooded. And it has some rudimentary trails existing. Years ago, not too many long ago, several years ago, they put in a sewer line down there. Let me get my pages straight here. And you can kind of see on this one, there you go. That's the old road from when they put the sewer line through. It's a 14-inch pumped main that goes from Wilderness Park, runs north up into the waste treatment plant. And you can kind of see where the road still goes. So it wouldn't take too much to clean those out and make those nice usable paths and trails. There's a sort of another shot. You can kind of see the old path that would be out there. Here's another one where if you're down there, it's easier to see, but there's some big cottonwood trees down there, and the path kind of winds around through the forest. And these are just some other pictures of the landscape down there. It's a beautiful stretch of river, and it's very attractive, and it's ours. It doesn't cost us anything. It's just been sitting down there idle. So far, this has generated quite a bit of interest. We've got the support of the Saline Parks Commission, of course, the Saline Historic Society, the Saline Historic District Commission, and the Saline River Greenway Alliance. So that's our idea. We're not asking the city for any money, not asking for any resources, just the permission to go ahead and take a look at this piece of property, and maybe over the winter start looking at some funding and some grants to get some trails put in. I'd just like to keep it a nature trail with maybe some informational signs about the history, because there's so much history down there that I think this could be a benefit to the city for generations to come. So thank you for your time. And does anybody have any questions? No questions? How did I do, okay? Did I get it right? Okay.
That was great.
All right, thank you very much.
That's a great job. Does council have any questions for Jim? I think we're all set. Come vote.
Now, let me think, how am I going to vote?
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think we all had a little history lesson tonight. So thank you very much, Tim and Bob. So we currently have a motion on the floor to acknowledge receipt and to authorize. Do we have any further discussion on this motion? Not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Great work. All these. Under discussion, do we have any commission or committee reports from council members? Do we have any reports or other announcements? Mr. Rhodes.
Just wanted to remind everyone of our Christmas tree lighting, holiday tree lighting, on November 30th, 7 o'clock in the evening, right in front of Key Bank. And then the day after that is the holiday parade, December 1st, 5:30 in the evening. Starts down by fire station and moves down Michigan Avenue down to Lewis. Always a great time to come out and meet your friends and neighbors and have fun, drink some hot chocolate, try to stay warm.
Any other announcements? No? Public comment under the Open Meetings Act. Any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Is there any other business to come before the City Council? We have a meeting on December 1st and December 3rd and December 17th. So we have a motion to adjourn at 9:18.
So moved.
Second.
Move Morrow, second Gearba. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.